was a nightmare.
So I've been a long-time listener, first-time writer, and honestly, I never thought I'd have a story twisted enough to share here. But here we are. About 3 years ago, my husband and I bought our first house. Nothing fancy, just a modest 2-bedroom in a quiet suburb where people actually waved at each other and knew their neighbors' names. The American dream, right? Well, almost. Our neighbor to the left was this woman named Patricia Healy, and if you're picturing some sweet grandmother type, let me stop you right there. Patricia was in her mid-60s, rail thin, with this permanent scowl that looked like it had been carved into her face decades ago and just never left. She had short grey hair that she kept in these tight, angry-looking curls, and she wore the same navy blue cardigan every single day, rain or shine, summer or winter. Now, Patricia wasn't openly hostile at first. She was just cold. When we moved in and tried to introduce ourselves with a plate of cookies, she took one look at them, said, "I don't eat processed sugar," and shut the door in our faces. The cookies were homemade, by the way. My husband just shrugged it off, said some people value their privacy, and we should respect that. If only we'd known. The first incident happened about 2 months after we moved in. We'd planted a small vegetable garden in our backyard. Nothing fancy, just some tomatoes, peppers, a few herbs. I'm talking maybe a 10 by 10 foot plot. We were proud of it though. It was our first garden in our first house. One morning, I went out to water the plants and found every single one of them pulled up by the roots and left lying on the ground to die. Not eaten by animals, not damaged by weather. Deliberately uprooted and arranged in this almost neat little row. Like someone wanted me to know this wasn't an accident. I immediately suspected Patricia, but my husband said I was being paranoid. Maybe it was raccoons, he said. Maybe some kids cut through our yard. I wanted to believe him, so I replanted everything and installed a small motion sensor light. 2 weeks later, it happened again. Every plant, uprooted, left to die. This time, I was furious. I marched over to Patricia's house and knocked on her door. When she answered, I asked her point blank if she'd been in our yard. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Your garden is an eyesore and attracts pests. If you can't maintain your property properly, perhaps you shouldn't garden at all." I was stunned. She basically just confessed, but in this twisted way where she made it sound like she was doing us a favor. Before I could respond, she shut the door again. My husband finally believed me after that, and we decided to install security cameras. We also built a small fence around our garden area. Nothing major, just a 3-foot decorative border to establish boundaries. That's when Patricia went to war. She filed a complaint with the HOA claiming our fence violated neighborhood aesthetics. It didn't. We checked the rules 3 times. Then she started calling the police for noise complaints every single time we had friends over, even if it was just quiet conversation on our back patio at 6 p.m. on a Saturday. The cops got to know us pretty well. They were always apologetic, said they knew it was nonsense, but they had to respond to every call. One officer even pulled me aside and told me to document everything because Patricia had a history of this behavior with previous neighbors. But the absolute worst part, Patricia started with the letters. They'd appear in our mailbox, always handwritten in this shaky, spidery script. They weren't threatening exactly, just deeply unsettling. Things like, "I know what you do in your bedroom at night. The walls are thin," or "Your husband looked at me wrong today. He should be more careful," or my personal favorite, "I've been counting. You've had visitors 13 times this month." That's excessive. We reported the letters to the police, but without explicit threats, there wasn't much they could do. Patricia denied writing them, of course, even though the handwriting matched the angry note she'd once left on our car about parking too close to her driveway. This harassment went on for over a year. We tried everything. We tried being kind, tried being firm, tried ignoring her completely. Nothing worked. Patricia seemed to feed off our misery. The breaking point came when my husband got a promotion that required us to relocate across the country. Honestly, we were relieved. We'd be rid of Patricia Healy and her poison. We put the house on the market, and that's when Patricia made her final move. She started telling potential buyers that our house was infested with mold, that we'd had multiple break-ins, that the foundation was cracked. All lies. Our realtor was furious. But again, we couldn't prove anything definitively. Finally, we accepted an offer well below asking price just to get out. The buyers were a young couple, maybe mid-20s, full of hope and excitement about their first home. I felt guilty. I wanted to warn them about Patricia, but my husband said we'd never close if we did. So I kept quiet, and we moved away. Here's where the story gets its ending, and I can't say I feel good about it, but I can't say I feel bad either. About 6 months after we moved, I got a Facebook message from the woman who'd bought our house. She said Patricia had started her harassment campaign immediately, just like with us. But unlike us, these new neighbors weren't interested in playing nice. Turns out the husband was a civil litigation attorney who specialized in harassment cases. He documented everything Patricia did with the precision of someone who does this for a living. Every letter, every false complaint, every act of vandalism to their property. And then he sued her. Not just a small claim suit either. He went after her for harassment, defamation, trespassing, destruction of property, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and about 5 other things I can't even remember. He demanded copies of all the police reports from our time there, which backed up his case perfectly. Patricia fought it at first, representing herself because she was too cheap to hire a lawyer. Big mistake. She lost, badly. The judgment was for over $80,000, and when Patricia couldn't pay, they put a lien on her house. She was forced to sell and move into some tiny apartment across town. The new neighbors sent me photos of the moving truck pulling away with all her belongings. They said they threw a block party that night to celebrate. I don't know where Patricia Healy is now. I don't really care. The lesson here is that sometimes karma doesn't work on its own. Sometimes karma needs a good lawyer and a paper trail. And if you're dealing with a nightmare neighbor, document everything, because you never know when that documentation might be exactly what someone else needs to finally stop them. Listen, I'm going to tell you this story, but I need you to understand something first. I'm a rational person. I have a master's degree in engineering. I don't believe in ghosts or curses or any of that supernatural nonsense, but I also can't explain what happened with my neighbor, Mr. Voss. I moved into my apartment about 4 years ago. It was a converted Victorian house split into 4 units, to upstairs to downstairs. I had the downstairs unit on the right, and Mr. Voss had the one directly above me. I never actually saw Mr. Voss in person, not once in the entire 2 years I lived there, but I heard him constantly. It started with the footsteps, every night, like clockwork. Starting at exactly 2:47 a.m., I'd hear him pacing, back and forth, for hours. The same path, the same rhythm, the same creaking floorboards. I knew every step of that route by heart because it woke me up every single night for months. I tried everything: earplugs, white noise machines, sleeping pills. Nothing worked. That pacing would seep into my dreams and pull me awake. I complained to the landlord, who said he'd talk to Mr. Voss. According to the landlord, Mr. Voss was an elderly man, a former university professor who'd lived there for over 30 years. The landlord described him as eccentric but harmless. The pacing didn't stop. Then came the sounds of dragging, like heavy furniture being moved across the floor. This happened randomly, no schedule, sometimes during the day, sometimes at 3 a.m. Drag, pause, drag, pause. It would go on for 10-15 minutes at a time. I started getting headaches. My work performance suffered because I was constantly exhausted. My girlfriend at the time said I was becoming obsessed with the noise, that I needed to just move or learn to deal with it. But then the packages started arriving. I'd come home to find boxes on my doorstep, addressed to me, but things I'd never ordered. Strange things: a taxidermied crow, an antique medical saw, a collection of Victorian-era photographs of dead children posed to look alive, a jar containing what looked like preserved animal organs. Every time, I'd return them or throw them away, and every time I'd check my credit cards and bank accounts. Nothing. I wasn't being charged for any of it. I confronted my landlord again, asked if Mr. Voss might be sending them. The landlord looked uncomfortable and said that Mr. Voss was a collector of unusual items, but he couldn't imagine why he'd be sending them to me. What does he collect? I asked. The landlord hesitated, then said, memories. I didn't understand what that meant, and the landlord wouldn't elaborate. The packages kept coming, each one stranger than the last. A bundle of human hair tied with a ribbon, a box of teeth, a photograph of my apartment building from the 1920s with a circle drawn around my window in red ink. That last one shook me. How did he have a photograph that old? And why mark my window? I decided to try to meet Mr. Voss face to face. I went upstairs and knocked on his door. No answer. I knocked again. Nothing, but I could hear movement inside, the distinctive pacing. I knocked harder, called out that I just wanted to talk. The pacing stopped abruptly. Then I heard footsteps approaching the door. They stopped right on the other side. I could sense someone standing there, inches away, separated only by that thin wooden door. Mr. Voss, I said, I just want to talk about the packages. Silence. But I swear I could hear breathing. I waited for maybe 5 minutes, but the door never opened. Finally, I gave up and went back downstairs. That night, the pacing was worse than ever. Louder, more frantic, accompanied by the dragging sound. It went on until sunrise. The next day, I found a note slipped under my door. Handwritten in shaky cursive, it read, "You live in her room. She wants her things back. I'm only the messenger." I took the note to the landlord and demanded answers. Who was she? What things? The landlord finally told me the truth. In 1952, a young woman named Catherine Marsh lived in my apartment. She was a graduate student, engaged to be married. One night, she didn't come home. They found her body 3 days later in the woods behind the property. She'd been murdered, though the killer was never found. Mr. Voss had been a young professor at the university at the time. He'd been Catherine's thesis advisor. According to the landlord, Mr. Voss had become obsessed with her death, convinced that her spirit remained in the building. He'd spent the last 70 years collecting items from the era she lived in, trying to recreate her world, trying to give her back what was taken from her. He's harmless, the landlord insisted, just a sad old man who never got over a tragedy. But I didn't feel safe anymore. I started packing to move out. The night before I was set to leave, I had a dream. In it, a young woman stood at the foot of my bed. She had dark hair and wore a dress from the 1950s. She looked sad but not threatening. "Thank you," she whispered. "You can keep them. I don't need them anymore." When I woke up, every single item that Mr. Voss had sent me was piled neatly in the corner of my bedroom. Things I'd thrown away, things I'd returned, all of it, but arranged almost lovingly, like a shrine. I moved out that morning without looking back. A year later, I got a call from the landlord. Mr. Voss had passed away peacefully in his sleep. When they cleaned out his apartment, they found it completely empty except for one thing. A photograph of Catherine Marsh, framed and sitting on a table in the center of the empty room. I still have the items Mr. Voss sent me. They're in a box in my attic. I can't bring myself to throw them away, but I can't look at them either. Sometimes I wonder if Mr. Voss was crazy, or if he really was just a messenger. Either way, I hope Catherine Marsh is finally at peace, and I hope Mr. Voss is too. 2 years ago, I rented a duplex with my best friend from college. We had one side, an older couple had the other. The walls between units were pretty thin, but we figured we could deal with it. The couple next door seemed nice enough. We'd see them in the driveway sometimes. The husband, Gary, was always friendly, always waved. The wife, Linda, was quieter, but she'd smile and nod when we said hello. About a month after we moved in, we started hearing the arguments. At first, it was just raised voices, muffled through the walls. We couldn't make out words, just tone. It happened maybe once a week, usually in the evening. Then it escalated. The shouting got louder. We started hearing crashes, things breaking. My roommate and I would look at each other uncomfortably, not sure what to do. We didn't want to be nosy, but we also didn't want to ignore something serious. One night, we heard Linda screaming, not arguing, screaming, like she was terrified. I called the police. When the cops arrived, Gary answered the door, calm as anything, told them everything was fine, just a loud movie. Linda appeared behind him, confirmed the story. She had no visible injuries. The cops couldn't do anything. After they left, my roommate and I felt awful. Had we overreacted? Had we just made things worse? The next day, Gary came over with a 6-pack of beer as an apology for the noise. He was so nice about it, so embarrassed. He explained that Linda had early onset dementia and sometimes got confused and frightened. The movie explanation was just easier than explaining the whole situation to the police, he said. We felt terrible. We apologized for calling the cops. Gary said he understood completely. No hard feelings. The screaming continued, but now we knew the context. Dementia was awful. We felt sorry for both of them, but then things got weird. I started seeing Linda in the backyard during the day while Gary was at work. She'd be gardening, reading, doing normal things. She seemed completely lucid, would wave and chat with me about the weather. No signs of dementia at all. I mentioned this to my roommate, and she said she'd noticed the same thing. Linda seemed totally fine during the day, but at night, we'd hear her screaming. We started paying more attention. The screams always followed the same pattern. They'd start around 9 p.m., last for about 20 minutes, then stop abruptly. And they always sounded the same tone, the same rhythm. My roommate, who was into true crime podcasts, started getting suspicious. She said something felt off. Dementia didn't work on a schedule like that. One night, when the screaming started, she pulled out her phone and started recording through the wall. Later, when we listened back, we heard something that made our blood run cold. In between Linda's screams and the brief pauses, you could hear something else. A whirring sound, mechanical. And then Gary's voice, muffled but clear enough. Again, louder this time. We took the recording to the police. Long story short, Gary had been running a disturbing website. Linda wasn't screaming because of dementia or fear. She was screaming because Gary was paying her too, recording it, and selling the recordings online to people with certain dark interests. It was legal, technically, consenting adults, no actual violence. But the police investigation found other things on Gary's computer, things that weren't legal, things I won't describe here. Gary went to prison. Linda moved away. We broke our lease and moved out immediately. I still can't hear anyone screaming, even in movies, without feeling sick. The lesson? Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And thin walls can reveal truths you never wanted to know. Okay, so I need to tell you about my neighbor Derek. And I need you to understand that this man made my life a living nightmare over grass. Actual grass. I am not even kidding. When my wife and I bought our house in this quiet suburban neighborhood, we were thrilled. The house was perfect, the neighbors seemed friendly, and everything was great. For about 2 weeks, Derek lived in the house directly across the street from us. Mid-40s, divorced, worked from home doing something with computers. He was also completely and utterly obsessed with his lawn. I'm not talking about someone who takes pride in their yard. I'm talking about a level of obsession that was genuinely disturbing. Derek's lawn was immaculate. Not a single weed. Perfectly edged. Cut to exactly 2.5 inches. A shade of green that didn't look natural. He had one of those fancy riding mowers, and he'd be out there every single Saturday at 7 a.m. sharp, making his perfectly straight lines back and forth. Our lawn was fine. Not perfect, but fine. We mowed it once a week. We watered it. It was green enough. We had some clover patches and a few dandelions, but we honestly didn't care. We had jobs and hobbies and a life beyond yard maintenance. Derek cared though. Oh boy, did Derek care. It started with the notes. We'd find them stuck to our front door, always printed out in this formal font like an official notice. Things like, your lawn height exceeds neighborhood standards. Please maintain at 2-3 inches for optimal appearance. Or dandelions are an invasive species and spread to neighboring properties. Please eradicate immediately. There were no neighborhood standards. We'd checked. Derek had just made them up. My wife wanted to ignore the notes, but I made the mistake of confronting Derek about them. I walked across the street one Saturday morning, knocked on his door, and politely asked him to stop leaving notes on our property. Derek stared at me like I'd just confessed to murder. Your lawn, he said slowly, is bringing down the entire street's property values. Do you have any idea how hard I work to maintain curb appeal? And you're just letting your yard turn into a meadow. I tried to explain that our lawn was perfectly acceptable, that we weren't violating any actual rules. Derek cut me off. I've lived here for 12 years, he said. 12 years? I've maintained excellence, and then you show up and ruin everything I've built. He slammed the door in my face. The next week, I woke up to find that someone had spray painted the words "lawn shame" across our driveway in orange paint. We called the police. They took a report, but said without proof, there wasn't much they could do. Derek denied everything. Said he'd been home all night and hadn't seen anything. But I knew it was him, and he knew that I knew. Things escalated quickly after that. Someone started mowing patterns into our lawn at night. Crude shapes, obscene images, all cut down to the dirt so they take weeks to grow back. Someone dumped weed killer in spots, spelling out words like trashy and lazy. We installed cameras, but Derek was smart. Whoever was doing this wore all black, a ski mask, and came between 2 and 4 a.m. when the camera's night vision made everything just a dark blur. We couldn't prove it was Derek. My wife wanted to move. We'd only been in the house 6 months, but she said it wasn't worth the stress. I refused. I wasn't going to let some lawn lunatic run us out of our own home. That's when I had an idea. A petty, beautiful idea. I stopped mow our lawn entirely. I know how this sounds, but hear me out. I did research and found out that our city had recently passed a natural lawn ordinance, allowing residents to let their yards grow wild as ECO-friendly pollinator habitats as long as you registered with the city and put up a small sign. So that's exactly what I did. Our lawn grew and grew and grew. Clover bloomed. Dandelions turned into those white puffballs and spread their seeds. Wild violets appeared. Our yard became this lush, chaotic meadow. And it was completely legal. I could see Derek across the street, watching from his window, his face turning purple with rage. The notes became unhinged. You're destroying the neighborhood. You're a disgrace. I will make you regret this. But he couldn't do anything. The city ordinance protected us. Then one night, I heard a noise outside. I looked out the window and saw Derek, standing in the middle of our wild lawn in his pajamas, just standing there, not doing anything, just standing, staring at his house. It was 3 a.m. I watched him for maybe 20 minutes. He didn't move. Finally, he walked back across the street and into his house. The next morning, Derek's lawn was destroyed. And I mean destroyed. Someone had driven what looked like a truck in circles all over it, tearing up huge chunks of grass, leaving deep muddy ruts. His perfect lawn was absolutely ruined. Derek called the police, convinced it was me, but our cameras showed our car hadn't left the driveway all night, and I had an alibi. I'd been home asleep. The police checked our Ring doorbell footage and confirmed it. But here's the thing, our cameras also showed something else. They showed Derek at 3:17 a.m. getting into his own truck and pulling around to his backyard. The angle didn't show what he did next, but 30 minutes later, he walked back inside. Derek had destroyed his own lawn. The police saw the footage. They asked Derek about it. He said he'd been moving some equipment for a project. They didn't buy it, but they also couldn't prove anything. I never told anyone what I suspected, that Derek had been so obsessed, so consumed by his hatred of my wild lawn, that he'd had some kind of psychotic break, that he'd destroyed the thing he loved most in some twisted act of self-sabotage. Derek's lawn never recovered. He tried to fix it, but the damage was too extensive. He eventually just covered it with gravel and artificial turf, which honestly looked terrible. He moved away about 6 months later, didn't say goodbye to anyone on the street. The new neighbors who bought his house are this lovely family with 3 kids who have a perfectly normal, imperfect lawn. They put up a swing set and a trampoline right in the middle of what used to be Derek's pristine grass. I still maintain my natural lawn. It's beautiful in its own wild way, full of bees and butterflies and life. And sometimes, when I'm out there enjoying the chaos of it all, I think about Derek and how he let perfection destroy him. The lesson? Don't let your obsessions control you. And never, ever go to war over grass. It's really not worth it. I'm going to tell you about the worst roommate situation I ever had. Except she wasn't my roommate. She was the tenant in the apartment directly below mine. And by the time I figured out what was really going on, it was almost too late. Her name was Sienna, and when I first moved into my studio apartment, she seemed totally normal. Late 20s, worked in marketing, always dressed professionally. We'd pass each other in the hallway and exchange pleasantries. She even helped me carry groceries up the stairs once when I was struggling with too many bags. The building was old, converted from a house into 4 apartments. The walls and floors were thin, but I didn't mind. I'm a quiet person, and the rent was cheap. For the first month, everything was fine. Then I started noticing small things. Sienna would be standing outside when I left for work in the morning, like she'd been waiting for me. She'd always have some reason, checking her mail, taking out trash, but it happened too consistently to be coincidence. Then I started finding little gifts outside my door. A cupcake with a note saying, "Welcome to the building," even though I'd been there over a month. A small plant. A candle, always with these cheerful notes signed with a smiley face. I thought she was just being friendly, maybe a little lonely. I thanked her politely and didn't think much of it. But then my things started disappearing. Small things at first. A hair tie I'd left on the bathroom sink. A book I was sure I'd left on my nightstand. A shirt that vanished from my laundry basket. I thought I was just being forgetful, stressed from my new job, misplacing things. Then one day, I came home to find my apartment door slightly ajar. I was certain I'd locked it. I always locked it. I stood in the hallway, heart pounding, debating whether to go inside or call the police. Finally, I pushed the door open carefully. Nothing seemed disturbed. Nothing was missing, but something felt off, like someone had been in my space. I checked the lock. No signs of forced entry. I must have just forgotten to pull the door completely shut, I told myself, but it kept happening. Once a week, sometimes twice, I'd come home to find the door not quite latched, and every time, I'd find something small rearranged. My toothbrush facing a different direction, a photo frame turned slightly, books reorganized. I started documenting everything, taking photos of how I left things so I could prove they'd been moved. I told my landlord, but he said the building was old and doors sometimes didn't latch properly. He suggested I get a deadbolt installed, which I did. That's when the notes started appearing inside my apartment. Post-its stuck in random places. On my bathroom mirror, you look tired. Are you sleeping okay? On my refrigerator, you should eat more vegetables. On my pillow, sweet dreams. The handwriting matched Sienna's notes from the gifts. I confronted her in the hallway, asked her point blank if she'd been in my apartment. She looked genuinely confused. Why would I be in your apartment? She asked. I showed her the notes. She studied them and frowned. This isn't my handwriting, she said, but it was. I was sure of it. I changed my locks. I installed a camera pointed at my door. I stopped being friendly with Sienna, started avoiding her completely. The notes stopped appearing inside. But now I'd find them slipped under my door. Longer notes, more personal, talking about things I'd done that day. Things no one should know. I saw you bought coffee at the shop on Main Street today. You looked happy. You talked to that man at the grocery store for a long time. Do you know him? She was following me. I went to the police with everything. The notes, the break-ins, the stalking. They talked to Sienna, who denied everything. She said I was harassing her, making up stories, that she was actually afraid of me. The officer pulled me aside and gently suggested that I might be experiencing stress-related paranoia. He recommended I see a therapist. I felt insane. Was I making this up? Was I losing my mind? Then one night, I woke up to a sound in my apartment. I'd fallen asleep on the couch watching TV. The clock said to 37 a.m. I lay perfectly still, listening. Someone was in my kitchen. I grabbed my phone, opened the camera app, and started recording. Then I slowly sat up. Sienna was standing in my kitchen, wearing pajamas, eating cereal from my cabinet, like it was the most natural thing in the world. What are you doing in my apartment? I said, my voice shaking. She turned and looked at me with this confused expression. What do you mean? She said, this is my apartment. No, I said. No, this is my apartment. You live downstairs. She laughed. No, you live downstairs. I live here. My blood ran cold. She genuinely believed what she was saying. She wasn't gaslighting me. She was delusional. I kept recording as I slowly stood up. Sienna, you need to leave right now. Why are you in my apartment? She asked, and her voice started rising. Why are you always in my apartment? I backed toward my door, keeping my phone pointed at her. She started following me. You're always here, she said, getting agitated. Always in my space. I can't get away from you. I reached my door, unlocked it, and ran into the hallway. I pounded on my neighbor's door across the hall while calling 911. Sienna came out of my apartment, still looking confused. Why are you making so much noise? She asked. People are trying to sleep. The police arrived quickly this time. They found Sienna standing in the hallway, insisting that she lived in my apartment and I was the one breaking in. They checked her ID. Her apartment was indeed the one below mine. Sienna had a psychotic break. She was convinced that she lived in my apartment and I was somehow invading her space. That's why she kept coming in, rearranging things, leaving notes. In her mind, she was decorating her own home and trying to get the intruder, me, to leave. She was hospitalized that night. I later learned she had a history of mental illness that had gone untreated. I moved out the next week. I couldn't stay there knowing that she'd been coming into my apartment for months, watching me sleep, going through my things, all while believing it was her right because in her mind, it was her home. The scariest part, if I hadn't woken up that night, if I hadn't recorded her, the police probably would have kept thinking I was the unstable one. I still check my locks multiple times every night. I still feel like someone's watching me sometimes. And I never, ever ignore my gut feeling when something feels off. Because sometimes the person you think is crazy is actually you defending yourself against someone else's delusion. And that's the most terrifying thing of all. This happened to my sister, but I was there for most of it. So I'm telling it from my perspective. My sister Rachel bought a condo in what seemed like a nice, quiet complex. Ground floor unit, small patio, good price. She'd just gotten divorced and was starting over, excited about her independence. Her next door neighbor was a guy named Brandon, mid-30s, friendly, always outside washing his car or tending to the shared courtyard plants that no one else bothered with. Brandon had this habit of waving. Every single time he saw Rachel, he'd wave. Cheerful, energetic waves. At first, Rachel thought it was sweet. Friendly neighbor. Nice guy, no big deal. But the waves became constant. He'd wave when she left for work. Wave when she came home. Wave if she checked her mail. Wave if she was visible through her window. Wave if she was on her patio. Wave, wave, wave. Rachel mentioned it to me casually at first. My neighbor waves a lot, she said. It's kind of weird but harmless. Then it got weirder. Brandon started timing his exits to match hers. Every morning, without fail. He'd come out of his condo within 30 seconds of Rachel leaving for work. And he'd wave. Every evening, he'd somehow be outside when she got home. Wave. If she went out on a weekend, there he was. Wave. Rachel started feeling uncomfortable. She mentioned it to Brandon once, trying to be polite. Hey, I've noticed you're always outside when I am. That's funny, right? Brandon smiled. I'd just like to be friendly. Neighbors should look out for each other, seemed reasonable enough. But it didn't stop. Then Rachel noticed something that made her skin crawl. Brandon's waves had become synchronized with her movements. If she waved back, he'd match her wave exactly. Same motion, same duration. If she didn't wave back, he'd keep waving until she at least acknowledged him. She tested it. One day, she waved with her left hand. He switched to his left hand mid-wave. She waved low, near her hip. He did the same. It was like he was mirroring her, and it felt deeply wrong. I told her she was overthinking it, that maybe Brandon just had some social awkwardness and didn't realize he was being weird. But then I visited her for a weekend and saw it myself. We went out to grab coffee, and Brandon was there, washing his car. Wave. We came back 20 minutes later. Brandon was still there, now watering plants. Wave. We ordered dinner delivery that evening. When the driver arrived, Brandon came outside, pretended to check his mail, and waved at us through the window as we took our food. It was unsettling. How long has he been doing this? I asked. Every day for 6 months, Rachel said. I looked at Brandon through the window. He was still standing there, looking at Rachel's condo, waiting. That's not normal, I said. Rachel started documenting the waves. She kept a log with timestamps. The pattern was clear. Brandon was watching her routine and making sure he was always visible when she was. But here's the thing. He never did anything else. Never approached her beyond a friendly hello. Never tried to start long conversations. Never showed up at her work or anywhere else. Just waved. It wasn't illegal. It wasn't even clearly harassment. He was just being friendly. Rachel talked to her landlord, who said Brandon had never caused any problems and was considered a model tenant. She talked to other neighbors, who said Brandon waved at everyone. He was just friendly. But they didn't see what we saw. They didn't notice that Brandon's waves at Rachel were different. Longer, more intense, more purposeful. Rachel started using her garage to avoid seeing him. She'd drive in, close the door immediately, and enter her condo from the inside. For a few weeks, it worked. No more waves. Then Rachel started finding things on her patio. Small things. A flower, a smooth stone, a folded piece of paper with a smiley face. No note, no explanation. Just small gifts left where only she would find them. She confronted Brandon. He denied leaving anything. Must be a secret admirer, he said, and smiled. Then he waved. I convinced Rachel to install a camera pointed at her patio. The footage showed Brandon, late at night, carefully placing items on her patio. He'd kneel down, arrange them carefully, and then stand there for a few minutes, just looking at her door. And here's the part that made my blood run cold. Before he left, every single time, he'd wave at the door, even though no one was there. Even though Rachel was inside asleep, he'd wave at her door like he was saying goodnight. Rachel took the footage to the police. They talked to Brandon, gave him a warning about trespassing, told him to leave Rachel alone. Brandon apologized profusely, said he was just trying to be nice, didn't mean to scare anyone, would stop immediately. And he did stop. No more gifts, no more perfectly timed appearances. But the waves continued, because Brandon couldn't be stopped from existing in his own space. And every time Rachel happened to see him, which was often since they were neighbors, he'd wave. And she'd have to see that smile. That friendly, empty smile. That wave. Rachel broke her lease and moved out 3 months later. Lost her deposit. Didn't care. She needed to get away from that wave. Before she left, I helped her pack. Brandon came out as we were loading the truck. He waved. Moving out, he called cheerfully. Yes, Rachel said curtly. That's too bad. You were a great neighbor. He stood there, watching us load box after box. As we pulled away, I looked in the side mirror. Brandon was standing in the courtyard, waving. He waved until we turned the corner and disappeared. Rachel still looks over her shoulder in parking lots. She still gets nervous when people wave at her. And she never, ever takes ground floor apartments anymore. Because sometimes the scariest thing isn't a threat. It's someone who doesn't think they're doing anything wrong. Someone who just wants to be friendly. Someone who just wants to wave.